The forest had no mercy for the dying. Alara stumbled over a root she couldn't see, her palm scraping bark as she caught herself against an oak older than memory. Her lungs burned not from exertion, but from the thing eating her from within. The physicians in Greyhold had given her 3 months. That was 4 weeks ago. She'd stopped counting days when she started tasting copper every morning. Behind her, the hounds bayed. Not the mongrels from the village, but something worse, something that had tracked her scent through 2 counties and across the border into the Shadowvale, the forest where even the king's men refused to enter after dark. Good. Let the hunters follow her here. Let them find what she'd found in the old woman's journal, hidden beneath the floorboards of her burned cottage. Let them learn what Alara had learned, that some curses were contagious. Thunder cracked overhead, though no rain fell. The air tasted of ozone and old stone. Her foot caught on something soft. She looked down. A body. Male. Throat torn open. Eyes frozen wide in the moonlight filtering through the canopy. His hunter's leathers bore the crest of House Valamont, the same men who'd killed her mentor and called it justice. Alara should have felt something. Fear, disgust, satisfaction. Instead, she felt her heartbeat slowing, her vision dimming at the edges. The poison in her blood was spreading faster now. Stress accelerated it, the physicians had warned. Avoid excitement, avoid exertion, avoid anything that makes you feel alive. She'd ignored every warning. The hounds' cries grew closer, joined now by men's voices. Torches flickered between the trees like fallen stars. Alara pressed deeper into the Shadowvale, where the trunks grew so close together they formed walls, and the darkness felt deliberate. Her hand found the vial in her pocket, the last tincture her mentor had brewed before they'd dragged her to the pyre. Foxglove and nightshade, distilled to crystal clarity. 1. Swallow would stop her heart in minutes. 2. Would make her blood lethal to anything that fed on her. She'd planned to take it before they caught her, to rob them of their spectacle. But now, stumbling through a forest that legends claimed belonged to the undead, she wondered if there was a better use for poison, a better revenge. The trees opened into a clearing she hadn't seen until she was standing in its center. Stone pillars rose from the earth like broken teeth, carved with symbols that hurt to look at directly. In the middle stood a structure too intact to be, ruins, a mausoleum of black marble veined with silver, its door ajar. Alara's breath misted in air that had grown suddenly, impossibly cold. The hounds went silent. Behind her, branches snapped. She went this way. A man's voice, hoarse with excitement. The abomination can't have gone far. He didn't finish. The scream that followed wasn't human. It was the sound of prey realizing, too late, what hunted it. Alara turned, her hand closing around the vial. Something moved through the trees faster than her eyes could track. One moment, 6 hunters stood at the clearing's edge, torches raised. The next, only 3 remained upright. The others were on the ground, throats opened with surgical precision, blood pooling black in the moonlight. The survivors ran. They made it 4 steps before the darkness took them. Alara stood frozen, her pulse a hummingbird trapped in her chest. Every instinct screamed at her to flee, but her legs had forgotten how to obey. The physicians had warned her about this too, the weakness that would claim her limbs before the poison claimed her mind. The darkness moved. It separated from the shadows between the pillars, took shape and substance, became a man who looked carved from the same black marble as the mausoleum, tall enough that she had to tilt her head back to meet his eyes, pale enough that the moonlight seemed to pass through him rather than reflect, and those eyes, silver, like the veins in the stone, like mercury in a glass vial, beautiful and utterly inhuman. He studied her with the detached curiosity of a scholar examining an unexpected specimen. Blood stained his mouth fresh, vivid red against colorless lips. "You're dying," he said. His voice was quiet, controlled, and somehow more terrifying than the screams had been. It wasn't a question. Alara's fingers tightened around the vial. "Yes, then you're wasting my time." He turned away, dismissing her with the same indifference he might show a moth. "Wait." The word escaped before she could stop it. Before pride or sense could intervene, he paused, not looking back. Why? Because her throat closed around the truth. Because she had nowhere else to go. Because she was 23 and dying and terrified of dying alone. Because the last person who'd shown her kindness had burned for the crime of teaching her to heal. Because she had nothing left to lose. And spite was a powerful fuel. "Because my blood is poisoned," she said instead. Foxglove, Nightshade, Belladonna, and 6 compounds even the physicians couldn't name. I'm dying of it, slowly. If something drinks from me, it dies. Now, he turned, and the interest in his silver eyes made her skin prickle. How slowly? 3 months. Maybe less. And you've been dosing yourself how long? 4 weeks. A smile ghosted across his mouth. There and gone like breath on glass. Clever. Desperate, but clever. He moved closer, each step deliberate, giving her time to bolt. She didn't. Couldn't. Her legs had given up entirely, and she was sinking to her knees in the frost-hard earth. He caught her before she fell, one hand beneath her elbow, the other at her back. His touch was ice against her fevered skin, but gentle, careful, as though she might shatter. You're burning alive from within, he murmured, close enough now that she could see the silver wasn't just in his eyes but threaded through his, black hair like starlight. How are you still conscious? Practice. Her vision swam, the clearing tilted, and she couldn't tell if the roaring in her ears was her failing heart or the wind picking up around them. I need sanctuary. From whom? House Valamont, the church. Anyone who thinks women who heal without prayer are heretics worth burning. His expression didn't change, but something shifted in the air between them, a tension that raised the hair on her arms. And in exchange for this sanctuary? He asked softly. What would you offer, little poisoner? Alara met his inhuman eyes and didn't flinch. Information. My mentor studied your kind for 30 years before they killed her. I have her journals. Her research. She paused, tasting copper. And when I die, you can study me. Learn what happens when your kind feeds on mine. You would offer me your death, not a question. An observation, clinical and cold. I'm offering it to someone, she said. Might as well be someone who can use it. For a long moment, he said nothing. The wind died. The forest held its breath. Then he smiled, a real smile this time, sharp as broken glass and just as dangerous. My name is Cassius Nix, he said. I am the last of my bloodline, the keeper of these woods, and I have not taken a mortal into my home in 200 years. He shifted his grip, lifting her as though she weighed nothing. But I find your proposal intriguing. The world spun. Alara felt herself being carried toward the mausoleum, toward the darkness beyond its silver-veined door. Will it hurt? She whispered. When you drink from me, Cassius looked down at her, and in his ancient eyes she saw something that might have been pity. Or hunger. Or both. I don't know, he admitted. No one has ever tried to poison me with their blood before. The last thing Alara saw before the darkness took her was the door closing behind them, sealing her inside with the monster she'd chosen over the ones who hunted her. And the last thing she thought before consciousness fled was that she'd finally stopped running. Alara woke to candlelight and silk. For a moment, she thought she'd died, that the poison had finally won, and whatever came after was draped in luxury she'd never known in life. But then pain flared through her chest, familiar, relentless, and she knew death wouldn't hurt this much. She was lying in a bed large enough for 3, beneath blankets so soft they felt like water against her skin. The room around her was carved from the same black marble as the mausoleum, but here the silver veins glowed faintly, providing illumination beyond what the candles offered. Magic. Old magic. The kind her mentor had whispered about in the dark hours before dawn. You're awake. Alara turned her head too quickly. The room tilted and found Cassius sitting in a chair beside the bed. He looked exactly as he had in the clearing. Inhumanly beautiful, perfectly still, watching her, with that unnerving focus that made her feel simultaneously studied and seen. How long? Her voice came out rusted. 6 hours. He gestured to a table beside the bed where a glass of water sat next to her, leather satchel, the one she'd lost somewhere in her flight through the forest. You collapsed the moment we crossed the threshold. Your heart stopped twice. She should have felt alarmed. Instead, she felt only a distant curiosity. But it started again. I ensured it did. He leaned forward, elbows on his knees, hands clasped. In the candlelight, his silver eyes held flecks of blue. Tell me about the poison. Alara pushed herself upright, ignoring the protest of her body. The movement brought her close enough to smell him smoke and rain, and something older, like stone worn smooth by centuries of water. Why? Because you're dying in my home. And I would prefer to understand the mechanism. So you can replicate it? A slight smile. So, I know whether your death will contaminate my sanctuary, Fair enough. Alara reached for the water, her hand shaking only slightly. The glass was crystal, impossibly fine. She drank deeply before speaking. My mentor discovered it by accident. She was treating a girl who'd ingested belladonna, trying to purge the poison before it killed her. But the girl had also been taking foxglove for her heart. The combination. She paused, remembering. It didn't kill her faster. It killed her slower. Changed the way the toxins moved through her blood. And your mentor saw an opportunity. She saw a weapon. Alara set the glass down. We lived in a region where vampire attacks were common. She thought if she could make human blood toxic, she could protect the village. Did it work? We never found out. The church discovered her research before she could test it. The words came out flat, emotionless. She'd cried all her tears in the first week. They said she was consorting with demons, burned her at sunset so the vampires couldn't claim her. Cassius was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice held something she couldn't quite name. And you took her research, continued it. I perfected it. Pride crept into her tone despite everything. The original formula would have killed the subject in weeks. Mine takes months. Allows time for the poison to saturate every tissue, every fluid. By the time I die, even my tears will be lethal. To my kind. To anything that feeds on blood. She met his eyes. Including you, Cassius Nix. He stood, moving to the window, except there was no window. Only a section of wall where the silver veins converged into a pattern like a star. He touched it, and the marble dissolved into transparency, revealing a view of the forest under moonlight. I haven't fed in a month, he said quietly. When you collapsed, your blood called to me. The scent of it. He trailed off. I haven't felt hunger like that in decades. Alara's pulse quickened. But you didn't. Drink. No. He turned back to her. Because I'm curious whether you'd actually kill me, or if you're simply prolonging the inevitable. I don't understand. Cassius crossed the room in 3 silent strides and sat on the edge of the bed. Close enough now that she could see the silver wasn't just in his eyes, but traced through his skin in lines so faint they might have been scars. Old scars, written in a language she didn't know. You're dying, Alara. You've poisoned yourself to avoid persecution, to spite your hunters, to give your death meaning. His voice was gentle, but his words cut deep. But you're still dying. And you came to me a creature of legend, a monster, and offered yourself as an experiment. It was a transaction, she said, defensive. Information for sanctuary. It was a plea. He reached out slowly, telegraphing the movement, and touched 2 fingers to her wrist, checking her pulse. His skin was cold, but not uncomfortably so. You could have drunk the poison and ended it in the forest. Instead, you gambled everything on a stranger's mercy. Alara wanted to argue, to insist she'd made a calculated choice, a strategic decision. But his fingers against her wrist felt like a tether, and she was so tired of pretending she didn't need one. I don't want to die alone, she whispered. Is that so terrible? No. Cassius released her wrist but didn't move away. It's human. They sat in silence for a moment. The candles flickered, casting dancing shadows across the silver-veined walls. Outside, something howled, a wolf or something worse, and the sound made Alara shiver. Why did you agree to shelter me? She asked. Truly. Cassius considered the question. Because in 2 centuries of existence, no one has ever tried to poison me. Most flee or beg or offer themselves willingly, hoping immortality will follow. He smiled, sharp and sad. You offered me death. It was refreshing. I'm not interesting. I'm desperate. You're both. He stood, moving back to the chair. Distance restored, though she felt the loss of his proximity like a dropped stitch. And you have knowledge I want. Your mentor's research. If what you say is true, it represents decades of vampire study, behavior patterns, weaknesses, feeding habits. You want to know your own weaknesses? I want to know if she discovered the one that matters. His expression darkened. The one that's kept me locked in these woods for 200 years. Before Alara could ask what he meant, Cassius stood abruptly. You need rest. Your heart is still irregular. He moved toward the door, a massive thing of black wood bound with silver. I'll have food brought, human food. Can you eat? Sometimes. Not much. He nodded. Then small portions. You'll need your strength. For what? Cassius paused in the doorway, half his face in shadow. For the choice you'll have to make when the poison takes you to the threshold. For the moment when you must decide whether to cross over. Or come back. Come back how? But she thought she knew. Thought she heard it in the careful way he spoke, in the ancient sorrow in his silver eyes. "I'll explain," he said softly. "When you're stronger. For now, sleep. Elara of Greyhold, you're safe here. I give you my word." "The word of a monster?" "The word of a monster," he agreed. "Which, in these woods, is the only currency that matters." Then he was gone, the door closing with a sound like a sigh. Elara lay back against the silk pillows, her mind racing despite her exhaustion. She'd wanted sanctuary, and she'd found it in the home of a vampire who studied her like a puzzle, who could have killed her a dozen times but instead checked her pulse with gentle fingers, who was bound to these woods by some weakness he wouldn't name. Outside, the howling continued. Inside, the candles burned with flames that cast no smoke, and the silver in the walls pulsed faintly, rhythmically, like a heartbeat, or like magic, keeping something out, or something in. Elara closed her eyes and felt the poison moving through her blood, slow and inexorable as a tide. She'd bought herself time, weeks, maybe months in exchange for information and her eventual death. But as sleep took her, dragging her down into darkness threaded with silver, she wondered if she'd actually bargained for something else entirely. Something that began with sanctuary and ended with a choice she couldn't yet imagine. Elara woke to the scent of bread. Real bread, warm, yeasty, touched with honey. Her stomach clenched with hunger so sudden and fierce it nearly doubled her over. She couldn't remember the last time she'd felt actual appetite. The poison had stolen that from her weeks ago. A tray sat on the table beside the bed. Bread torn into careful pieces, soft cheese, sliced pears so ripe they glistened. A cup of something dark that smelled of herbs. Not the bitter tea the physicians had forced down her throat, but something gentler. No note. No explanation. Just food, and the absence of anyone to watch her eat it. Elara pulled herself upright, muscles protesting. Every movement felt like pushing through water, but she managed to reach the tray without collapsing. The bread was still warm. Someone he had brought it recently. She ate slowly, methodically, waiting for her stomach to rebel. It didn't. The cheese melted on her tongue, rich and complex. The pears were sweet enough to make her teeth ache. She drank the tea and felt warmth spread through her chest, loosening the constant tightness there. For 5 perfect minutes, she didn't feel like she was dying. Then the pain returned, sharp and familiar. And she remembered. The door opened without warning. Cassius entered carrying a stack of leather-bound books, his movements liquid and silent. He paused when he saw her awake, his silver eyes dropping to the half-empty tray. "You ate." Something in his voice, satisfaction, relief, made her defensive. "You brought food, designed to tempt a corpse. What did you expect?" "I expected you to eat 2 bites and spend the next hour purging them." He set the books on a desk she hadn't noticed before. Massive, black wood carved with the same symbols that marked the mausoleum. "Your mentor's journals were very specific about the poison's effects on digestion." Elara froze, her hand halfway to another piece of bread. "You read her journals." "I read everything in your satchel while you slept." He said it without apology, turning to face her fully. In the candlelight, the silver veins in his skin seemed more pronounced. "You said you'd trade information for sanctuary. I'm collecting on that bargain. Those journals are private, sacred. The last pieces of her mentor's mind, preserved in cramped handwriting and careful diagrams. They're all I have left of her. Then you'll understand why I need to study them thoroughly." Cassius moved closer, and she caught that scent again, smoke, rain, ancient stone. "Your mentor didn't just research vampires, Elara. She researched me." The bread turned to ash in her mouth. "What?" He picked up one of the journals, flipped it open to a marked page. Even from across the room, Elara recognized her mentor's hand. Cassius Nyx. Last of the Nyx bloodline, bound to the Shadow Vale by a curse of his own making, has not left the forest in 200 years. Local legend claims he slaughtered his entire house in a single night, then carved wards into his own flesh to prevent himself from doing it again. The silence that followed was absolute. "She wrote that?" Elara's voice came out small. 3 years ago, if the date is accurate. Cassius closed the journal with deliberate care. She stood at the forest's edge and sketched the wardstones, noted the pattern, theorized that the magic binding me here was blood-based, requiring constant renewal. His smile was terrible. She was mostly correct. I didn't know. She never, Alara's mind raced. She never told me she'd been here, never mentioned your name. Because she was wise enough to know that knowledge was dangerous. He set the journal down, his movements precise and controlled in a way that made her think of tightly leashed violence. And yet here you are, carrying her research into my home, offering me the very information that could help me break my bonds. I didn't know it was about you specifically. I thought, she broke off. What had she thought? That she could trade generic vampire lore for shelter? That a creature who'd lived centuries would find her pitiful knowledge useful? She'd been desperate and stupid, and now she was trapped in a vampire's lair with journals that detailed his weaknesses. Cassius must have seen the fear in her face because his expression softened fractionally. I'm not going to hurt you, Alara. If I wanted your death, I would have left you in the forest. You want something else? Yes. He gestured to the journals. I want to understand how. Your mentor concluded that blood magic bound me here, and I want to know if she discovered the source. Why would I help you escape? Alara demanded. If these woods are the only thing containing you, you think I'm contained for others' safety? Not a question. A correction. You think I slaughtered my house in bloodlust, and the wards keep me from doing it again. Didn't you? Cassius moved to the false window, touching the silver-veined marble. It dissolved again, revealing the forest. Dawn was breaking. Alara could see faint light touching the distant treetops, though the shadows here remained deep. I killed them because they were going to kill every living soul in a 3-county radius, he said quietly. They'd grown mad with hunger, with power. They saw humans as cattle, as playthings. When I tried to stop them, they turned on me. His hand pressed flat against the transparent barrier. So I ended it. All of them. 13 vampires, including my sire, my siblings, my lovers. And when it was done, I carved the wards into my own flesh to ensure their madness wouldn't pass to anyone else. Their madness, Alara echoed. Not yours? Our bloodline carried a curse. He turned back to her, and his silver eyes held bottomless grief. The older we grew, the harder it became to resist the call of blood. Eventually, every Nyx went mad, killed indiscriminately, became the monsters humans feared. His voice dropped to barely a whisper. I'm the last because I bound myself here before the madness could take me fully. The wards use my own blood to suppress the hunger, to keep me controlled. Alara sat very still, processing this. How long do you have? Before it takes you? I don't know. Decades, perhaps. Maybe less. He smiled, brittle. Your mentor theorized that the wards are weakening, that eventually they'll fail, and I'll become what I destroyed my entire family to prevent. And you want to break the curse before that happens. I want to understand it before that happens. To know if there's a cure, or if the only mercy is the final death. He picked up another journal, held it out to her. Your mentor came closer to understanding vampire blood magic than anyone in centuries. If there's an answer, it might be in these pages. Alara took the journal with shaking hands, opened it. Saw her mentor's handwriting, careful and clear. The nature of the Nyx curse remains unclear, but the wards themselves suggest a possibility that the madness isn't inherent to the bloodline, but a symptom of incomplete transformation. Further research required. Incomplete transformation, Alara read aloud. What does that mean? I don't know. She died before she could elaborate. Cassius returned to the desk, pulled out a chair. But you're a healer. You studied under her for how long? 5 years. Then you understand her methods, her notation system, how she approached problems. He gestured to the books. Help me decipher here. Research. In exchange, I'll keep you comfortable for whatever time you have left. Food, shelter, warmth, peace. And when the poison kills me, then I'll ensure your death has meaning. I'll complete your mentor's work, find out if human blood can be weaponized against my kind. Your sacrifice will protect future humans from creatures like me. It should have sounded ominous. Instead, it sounded like the first honest offer anyone had made her since the church came for her mentor. Alara looked down at the journal in her hands, then at the vampire watching her with ancient, weary eyes. A monster who'd murdered his family to save others, who'd carved wards into his own flesh to cage the beast inside him, who was asking for her help with a courtesy he didn't need to extend. I'll help you, she said. But I want something in return beyond comfort. Cassius tilted his head, curious. Name it. Teach me. About vampires. About blood magic. About everything my mentor couldn't. She met his silver gaze steadily. If I'm going to die, I want to die understanding. I want to know if there was ever a chance to save her, to save us. For a long moment, he simply looked at her. Then he inclined his head, formal and oddly graceful. I accept your terms, Alara of Greyhold. He extended his hand across the space between them. I'll teach you everything I know, and in return you'll help me understand what I am. She clasped his hand. His skin was cold and smooth as marble, his grip gentle despite the strength she could feel coiled beneath it. We have a bargain, she said. His smile was small and sad and genuine. We do. Outside, the sun continued to rise, but the shadows around the mausoleum remained deep and cool and protective. Inside, the candles burned steadily, and the silver veins in the walls pulsed with ancient magic. And in that moment, dying in a vampire's sanctuary, Alara felt more alive than she had in weeks. The library was a cathedral of knowledge carved from living stone. Alara stood in the doorway, momentarily overwhelmed. Shelves rose 3 stories high, spiraling upward into shadows the candlelight couldn't touch. Books filled every surface, leather-bound tomes, scrolls secured with wax seals, loose parchments organized into careful stacks. The air smelled of dust and old paper and something else, something metallic that made her think of blood and rain. This is impossible, she breathed. How did you get all of this into a mausoleum? Cassius appeared at her shoulder, silent as smoke. She'd stopped flinching at his sudden appearances, a development that should probably concern her. The mausoleum is only the entrance. My home extends beneath the forest. Rooms carved from bedrock, connected by passages my family built over centuries. How far down does it go? Far enough that I've forgotten some of the lower chambers. He moved past her into the library, his boots silent on the stone floor. This was my brother's domain. He collected obsessively human texts, vampire histories, magical theory. After I killed him, I couldn't bring myself to destroy his work. The casual mention of fratricide made Alara's stomach turn, though she kept her face neutral. You miss him? It wasn't a question. Cassius stopped before a shelf, his hand hovering over the spines. I miss who he was, before the madness, before he started viewing humans as amusing diversions to torture. His fingers closed around a book, pulled it free. He once spent a decade studying human medicine, trying to understand why your kind was so fragile, so easy to break. And then he started breaking them. Yes. Cassius turned, holding out the book. It was bound in dark leather, the title burned into the cover in a language Alara didn't recognize. This was his journal, the last year before I ended him. It details the progression of the madness, the early signs, the loss of control, the way hunger became the only thing that mattered. Alara took it carefully, aware she was holding a confession, a warning. Why show me this? Because I want you to understand what I'm fighting. He gestured to a reading table near the center of the library, already set with more books, her mentor's journals, a silver knife that gleamed in the candlelight. And because if we're going to decode your mentor's research, you need to understand the context. The history of my bloodline, what we were, what we became. She followed him to the table, her body protesting the extended movement. The pain in her chest was a constant companion now, sharp and insistent. Cassius noticed his eyes tracked the way she pressed her hand to her sternum, the careful way she lowered herself into the chair. The pain is worse, he observed. It's always worse. Alara forced her hand away from her chest. I'm fine. You're dying, said with that clinical detachment that was somehow more comforting than false sympathy. But the tea helped. Your coloring is better. What was in it? Willow bark for pain, hawthorn for the heart, and a few ingredients your physicians wouldn't approve of. He sat across from her, separated by a table that felt too wide and too narrow at once. Vampire blood has healing properties in small diluted doses, not enough to transform, but enough to strengthen. Alara's hand went instinctively to her throat. You put your blood in my tea? 3 drops, heavily diluted, barely enough to register. His expression was unreadable. You needed the strength to think clearly, and I needed you conscious for this conversation. Would you have preferred I let you suffer? She should have felt violated, used. Instead, she felt that same treacherous warmth from the tea spreading through her chest again. Relief, comfort, danger, something whispered in her mind. This is how it starts, how they make you want them. But Cassius wasn't looking at her like prey. He was looking at her like a colleague, a partner in research. No, she admitted. I wouldn't have preferred that. Something shifted in his expression. Approval. Maybe. He reached for one of the books on the table, opened it to a marked page. Then let's begin. Your mentor's notes reference incomplete transformation 3 times in relation to the Nyx curse. I need to know if she explained what that means. They worked through the afternoon, though. Alara lost track of time in the library, where no windows showed the sun's passage. Cassius proved to be a patient teacher, explaining vampire physiology with the precision of a scholar and the experience of someone who'd lived in such a body for centuries. Transformation isn't instantaneous, he told her, his finger tracing a diagram in one of his brother's journals. When a vampire feeds on a human to the point of death, then offers their own blood in return, it triggers a change. But the change takes time. Days, sometimes weeks. During that period, the human is neither alive nor dead, caught between states. And if the transformation is interrupted, usually they die. He turned the page. But there are legends of humans who survived partial transformation, who retained their humanity but gained certain vampire traits: enhanced strength, limited healing, and hunger. Alara looked up sharply. Your mentor wrote about this, about fledglings who never fully turned. She flipped through the journal before her, found the page. She called them threshold walkers, said they were vulnerable to both silver and holy water, could walk in daylight but not without pain. And the Nyx curse? Cassius leaned forward, intent. Did she connect it to incomplete transformation? Alara scanned the page, then the next. Her mentor's handwriting grew smaller here, cramped, as though she'd been writing quickly, urgently. The Nyx bloodline displays characteristics consistent with threshold walking, despite being fully transformed. Hypothesis: original sire was interrupted during transformation, creating a generational defect. Each generation carries the incomplete change forward, resulting in progressive instability. The madness isn't inherent, it's the blood trying to complete what was left unfinished. She read it aloud, her voice steady despite the implications. When she finished, Cassius was very still. A defect, he said quietly, passed down through generations, growing worse with each iteration. She thought it could be corrected. Alara turned the page. She wrote that if the incomplete transformation is the root cause, then a complete transformation might cure it. That's impossible. I'm already a vampire. But are you? She met his eyes. If your bloodline carries an incomplete change, if the transformation was never finished properly, then technically you're a threshold walker. The words fell like stones. Neither fully human nor fully vampire. Caught between. They sat in silence, the weight of revelation settling between them. Around them, the library seemed to hold its breath. Books and scrolls witnessing a truth that had remained hidden for centuries. If she's right, Cassius said finally, if I'm incomplete, then the madness is just a symptom. The blood trying to force a completion that can't happen naturally. Or that can. Alara turned to a later entry, her heart racing despite the pain. She theorized that a second transformation might work. If a vampire strong enough and old enough fed you their blood while you were at the threshold of the madness, it might override the defect. Complete what was left unfinished. That would require finding a vampire willing to sire me anew, to share blood with someone already turned. Cassius shook his head. No vampire would do that. The process would be agonizing for us both. And if it failed, I'd die. You're going to die anyway. Or go mad, which seems worse. His laugh was sharp and humorless. True enough. He stood, moved to the window, except there were no windows here, only shelves that rose into shadow. Your mentor was brilliant, but this theory is untested. She had no way to prove it would work. She had a way. Alara found the final entry, dated 3 days before her mentor's death. She was going to test it. On herself. Cassius turned slowly. What? She'd been dosing herself with vampire blood. Small amounts, taken over months. She wanted to induce a partial transformation, to walk the threshold and document what it felt like from inside. Alara's throat tightened. She thought if she could experience the incomplete change herself, she could find a way to complete it. The church discovered her before she could finish. Yes. The word was bitter. They found vials of blood in her cottage, accused her of consorting with demons, burned her without trial. Cassius returned to the table, sat heavily. For the first time since she'd met him, he looked tired. She was trying to save people, to understand us so she could cure the madness. She was trying to save you specifically. Alara touched the journal. The last entry says, "If Cassius Nix can be healed, if the curse can be broken, then perhaps my life's work will have meant something. Perhaps humans and vampires don't have to be eternal enemies." The silence stretched long enough that Alara counted her own heartbeats. 47 before Cassius spoke again. She thought we could coexist, that the only thing preventing peace was the madness. She thought a lot of things. She was an idealist. Alara closed the journal. But she wasn't wrong about everything. "The tea you made me, it's helping. I can feel it. Whatever healing properties vampire blood has, they're real. In small doses." He looked at her, and his silver eyes held something she couldn't name. But to attempt a second transformation, to cure the incomplete change that would require a full exchange. My blood, a great deal of it, and yours in return. My poisoned blood. Yes. His smile was grim. "We're quite the pair. You, dying slowly of self-administered poison. Me, cursed with a transformation that was never completed. Both of us trapped by blood." Alara felt the poison moving through her veins, steady and inexorable. Felt the warmth of the vampire blood in her tea, fighting to keep her heart beating. Two opposing forces, locked in a war that would eventually destroy her. Unless, what if we helped each other? The words escaped before she'd fully formed the thought. "You need blood strong enough to complete your transformation. I need something, a cure, a reprieve. What if there's a way to use both?" Cassius leaned back, studying her. "You're suggesting we experiment. On ourselves. I'm suggesting we don't give up." She held his gaze. "My mentor didn't. She died trying to understand, trying to find answers. The least we can do is finish what she started." For a long moment, he said nothing. Then he reached across the table, turned her mentor's journal to face him, and began to read. "Then we begin tomorrow," he said. "Tonight, you rest. Regain your strength, because if we're going to attempt this, we'll need to be very, very careful. And if it doesn't work, then at least we tried." He looked up, and his smile was sharp and real. "And at least you won't die alone." Alara smiled back, feeling something dangerous and warm unfurl in her chest. Not attraction, she wasn't foolish enough to confuse research partnership with romance, but maybe something like recognition, like finding someone who understood what it meant to be trapped by your own blood and still keep fighting. "Tomorrow, then," she agreed. Outside, night had fallen again. Inside, the candles burned steadily, and between them, a vampire and a dying girl made plans to rewrite the rules of transformation. Neither noticed the way the silver veins in the walls pulsed faster, like a heartbeat responding to hope. Alara dreamed of fire. She'd had this dream before the pyre. The smoke, her mentor's screams. But tonight was different. Tonight, she stood in the flames with her mentor, holding her hand while the fire consumed them both. "You have to let me go," her mentor said, her voice clear despite the roar of burning wood. "I can't." Alara's grip tightened. "You're all I have left." "No." Her mentor smiled, ash falling from her hair like snow. "You have his secrets now. His trust. Use them, Alara. Finish what I started. I don't know how." "Yes, you do." Her hand was crumbling, dissolving into embers. "You've always known. You just have to be brave enough to burn." Alara woke gasping, her hand outstretched toward nothing. The room was dark, except for a single candle by the bed. How long had she slept? Hours? Days? A figure moved in the shadows. Cassius, seated in the chair again, watching her with those unreadable silver eyes. "You cried out," he said quietly. "I thought you might be in pain." "Just a dream." She sat up slowly, her chest tight but not agonizing. The tea, no. His blood in the tea was still working. "What time is it?" 3 hours past midnight. You slept through yesterday evening and most of today." He gestured to the table where a fresh tray sat. More bread, more cheese, a cup of tea that smelled of herbs and something else, something metallic. "You needed the rest. The poison is spreading faster than your mentor's notes predicted." Ilara's hand went to her sternum, pressed against the persistent ache. "How much faster?" "Fast enough that we need to begin tonight, not tomorrow." He stood, moved closer. In the candlelight, the silver veins in his skin were luminous. "I've prepared the ritual chamber. If you're strong enough, we start now." She should have felt afraid. Instead, she felt only a strange calm. What exactly are we starting? Your mentor's theory requires testing. We need to know if my blood can stabilize your system while you're in this transitional state. If it can, then we proceed to the next step, attempting to complete my transformation, while simultaneously purging the poison from your blood. And if it can't stabilize me, then you die faster. His bluntness should have been cruel. Instead, it felt respectful. Honest. But you're dying anyway, Alara. At least this way, we learn something. She almost laughed. You really know how to motivate a patient. I'm not trying to motivate you. I'm trying to give you a choice. He extended his hand. Come with me now, and we attempt something that's never been tried. Or stay here, live out your remaining weeks in comfort, and die peacefully. Either way, I'll honor our bargain. Alara looked at his offered hand, pale, strong, marked with silver scars that formed patterns she was beginning to recognize as old magic. A hand that had killed his entire family, that had carved wards into his own flesh to contain a curse, that had made her tea with gentle precision to ease her pain. She took it. His fingers closed around hers, cool and steady, and he pulled her to her feet with careful strength. Her legs wobbled, she'd been in bed too long, but he caught her other arm, steadied her until the dizziness passed. Can you walk? Yes. Barely, but yes. He guided her through passages she'd never seen, down spiraling stairs carved from bedrock. The air grew colder, damper. The candles in the walls burned with blue flames that cast strange shadows. Symbols marked the stone, the same symbols from the mausoleum, from the ward stones in the clearing. These passages are warded, Cassius explained as they descended, designed to contain powerful magic, to prevent things from escaping. Things like you? Things like the ritual we're about to attempt. They reached a landing where a door stood, black wood reinforced with silver, inscribed with symbols that hurt to look at directly. What we're attempting isn't natural, Alara. We're going to force two types of magic to coexist in one body. Yours. He opened the door. The chamber beyond was circular, carved from a single piece of black stone that reflected no light. In the center stood a table marble, veined with silver. Around it, candles burned in a perfect circle, their flames utterly still despite the air that moved through the room. On the table, a silver knife, 2 crystal vials, soft cloth, nothing else. Lie down, Cassius said gently. Alara approached the table, her heart hammering despite the calm she'd felt upstairs. This was real. This was happening. She was going to let a vampire feed from her, not to drain her, but to heal her, or kill her faster. She climbed onto the table, the marble cold against her back. Above, the ceiling disappeared into shadow. She couldn't see the top of the chamber, only endless darkness. Cassius moved to her side, his expression serious. I'm going to take your blood first. Not much, only enough to test its potency. Then I'll give you mine. A full exchange, enough to trigger the early stages of transformation. Will it hurt? Yes. He didn't apologize for it. But I'll be as careful as I can. She nodded, not trusting her voice. He took her wrist, turned it palm up. His thumb found her pulse, pressed gently. Your heart is racing. I'm about to let a vampire drink from me. Of course my heart is racing. A slight smile. Try to stay calm. The poison responds to stress. Your mentor documented this. If your pulse spikes too high, the toxins will flood your system faster. So don't be afraid while you bite me. Simple. I'm not going to bite you. He picked up the silver knife. This is a medical procedure, not a feeding. We do this precisely, or not at all. The knife flashed once in the candlelight. Alara felt a sharp sting, saw blood well up from the small incision on her inner wrist. Dark blood, nearly black in the blue candlelight. Cassius held one of the crystal vials beneath the wound, caught 3 drops, then pressed the cloth against her wrist with gentle pressure. That's enough. He lifted the vial, held it to the light. The blood inside seemed to move, writhing like something alive. Definitely poisoned, he murmured. I can smell the nightshade from here. Will it kill you? Let's find out. Before she could protest, he brought the vial to his lips and drank. Alara pushed herself up on her elbows. What are you? Cassius stumbled back, the vial shattering on the stone floor. His hand went to his throat, his silver eyes going wide. For a terrible moment, he couldn't breathe, couldn't speak, just stood there frozen while something worked through his system. Then he gasped, doubled over, and vomited black blood onto the floor. Cassius! Alara tried to get up, but her legs wouldn't hold her. He held up a hand, stopping her, straightened slowly. His face was chalk white, his lips stained with darkness, but he was breathing again. Well, he said hoarsely. Your mentor was right. 3 drops and I'm crippled. A full feeding would absolutely kill me. Then we can't do this. I can't give you my blood. We can. He moved to the table, picked up the second vial, this one filled with liquid silver. We just have to cure you first. Remove the poison from your system before we attempt the transformation. That's impossible. The poison is in every cell by now. Not impossible. Difficult. He set the vial down, met her eyes. I'm going to give you my blood. Enough to trigger a partial transformation. While you're in that state, your body will rebuild itself. Vampire healing will purge the foreign substances. And when it's done, will I be human again? I don't know. His honesty was brutal. Your mentor's notes suggest threshold walkers retain some vampire characteristics even after the transformation fails. You might be changed forever. Alara lay back on the marble, stared up into the darkness. Changed forever. Or dead in weeks. Those were her options. Do it, she said. Cassius didn't argue. Didn't ask if she was. Sure. He simply picked up the silver knife, pressed the blade to his own wrist, and cut deep. Silver blood welled up, luminous and impossible. He held his wrist over her, let the blood drip onto her lips. Drink, he commanded softly. Alara opened her mouth. The blood hit her tongue, and the world exploded into sensation. Cold fire racing down her throat, flooding her chest, spreading through her veins like lightning. She gasped, arched off the table, felt Cassius's free hand press against her shoulder, holding her down. Don't fight it, his voice, distant and echoing. Let it change you. But her body was fighting. The poison and the vampire blood warred inside her, tearing at each other, and she was caught between them. Pain bloomed everywhere, her chest, her stomach, her bones. She couldn't breathe, couldn't think, could only feel herself being unmade and rebuilt, torn apart cell by cell. She screamed. Cassius's blood kept coming, relentless and cold and burning. His other hand cupped her face now, his voice low and insistent. Stay with me, Alara. Stay human. Don't let go. Don't let go. She clung to those words, to the feel of his hand against her cheek, to the silver eyes that watched her with something like fear. And slowly, impossibly, the pain began to recede. The war inside her settled into an uneasy truce. The poison was still there, she could feel it, dark and familiar. But now something else moved through her blood too. Something ancient and powerful that pushed back against the toxins, containing them, controlling them. Cassius pulled his wrist away. The wound was already healing, silver flesh knitting together seamlessly. Alara lay gasping on the marble, her entire body trembling. But when she pressed her hand to her chest, the pain was gone. The constant ache that had haunted her for weeks gone. How do you feel? Cassius asked, his voice taut. She took inventory. Her heartbeat was strong, steady. Her breathing came easily. Her limbs felt, weak but responsive. Different, she whispered. I feel different. Look at me. She turned her head. Cassius was leaning over her, his silver eyes intent. He touched her throat gently, checking her pulse. His expression changed. Your heart. It's slower, stronger. Is that good? It means the transformation is taking hold. He helped her sit up, his hands careful on her arms. How's the pain? Gone. Completely gone. She flexed her fingers, marveling. How is that possible? Vampire blood accelerates healing. Temporarily. It won't last, the poison is still in you. But for now, you're stable. He stepped back, giving her space. We'll monitor you through the night. See if the change holds or if the poison reasserts itself. Alara slid off the table, surprised when her legs held her weight. She felt almost normal, almost herself. Except for the hunger. It hit her suddenly, sharply, a need so intense it nearly drove her to her knees. Not for food, for something else. Something, warm and pulsing and alive. For blood. She looked at Cassius, and he must have seen it in her eyes because he went very still. That's the threshold, he said quietly. The moment between human and vampire. You'll feel urges you never felt before. Hungers that aren't your own. I want. She couldn't say it. I know. He moved closer, cautious now. But you're strong enough to resist. Your humanity is still intact. Focus on that, on who you are beneath the hunger. Alara closed her eyes, breathing slowly. Counted her heartbeats. Felt the poison and the vampire blood coexisting in her veins. An impossible balance. When she opened her eyes again, the hunger had dulled to a manageable ache. "I'm still me," she said. "Yes." Cassius smiled, and it was genuinely relieved. "You're still you, and tomorrow we'll see if we can cure you completely. Make you human again. And your curse? The incomplete transformation? One problem at a time." He offered his hand again. "Come. You need to. Rest. Let the change settle." She took his hand, let him lead her back through the warded passages toward her room. But as they climbed the spiral stairs, she felt the weight of what they'd done settling over her. She'd crossed a threshold tonight, drunk vampire blood, let herself be changed, and somewhere in the darkness behind them, in that circular chamber, 3 drops of her poisoned blood stained the floor. A warning, or a promise. She wasn't sure which. Alara woke to silver. Not the silver of Cassius's eyes or the veins in the walls, but a luminous quality to the air itself, as though the world had been dipped in moonlight. Everything looked sharper, clearer. She could see individual dust motes floating in the candlelight, could count the grain patterns in the wooden door across the room. She sat up slowly. No pain, no weakness. Her body felt light, responsive, humming with energy she hadn't possessed in months. She was also desperately thirsty, not for water, for something richer, warmer. The hunger from last night had returned, patient and insistent as a heartbeat. Focus on who you are beneath the hunger. Cassius's words from the ritual chamber. Alara clung to them now, forcing herself to breathe slowly, to push the need down. She was a healer, a scholar, human, mostly human. The door opened. Cassius entered carrying the usual tray. But this time Alara noticed things she'd missed before: the way he moved with liquid grace, the absolute silence of his footfalls, the way the candlelight didn't quite reach his eyes. And she could smell him. Smoke and rain and stone, yes, but beneath that something else. Something that made the hunger sharpen painfully. His blood. She could smell his blood. Cassius set the tray down, his movements careful. "Your pupils are dilated. You're experiencing enhanced senses. I can hear your heart." The words escaped before she could stop them. "Except you don't have a heartbeat. But I can hear something. This slow rhythm. Like a drum in deep water," he finished. "That's residual magic. The wards I carved into myself. They pulse with borrowed life force." He moved closer, studying her face with clinical interest. "The transformation is progressing faster than expected. We have maybe a day before you cross over completely. And then you'll need to make a choice." He sat in his chair, the distance between them suddenly feeling vital. Either complete the transformation and become vampire, or let it fail and revert to human, though reverting may kill you. The poison will reassert itself, stronger than before. Alara processed this. "So I have 3 options. Die of poison, become a vampire, or die trying to stay human. Essentially, those are terrible options." A slight smile. "Yes, but they're yours to make." She stood, testing her balance. Perfect. She felt powerful, capable, like she could run through the forest for hours without tiring. "And your transformation?" "We cured me. First, so my blood wouldn't poison you during the exchange. But have you thought about who's going to complete your change?" Cassius's smile faded. "That's the complication. To complete a vampire transformation requires blood exchange with an older, stronger vampire. Someone whose bloodline is pure, uncursed." His silver eyes met hers. "I'm the last of my line. There's no one left strong enough to sire me anew." "Then we find someone." "There's no one to find. I killed every vampire powerful enough to help me." His voice went flat. "That was rather the point." Alara moved to the false window, touched the marble. It dissolved at her contact. Had it always done that? Or was this another threshold ability? Beyond, the forest spread out in perfect clarity. She could see individual leaves on distant trees, could hear the creek running half a mile away. "Your brother's journals," she said slowly. "He documented other vampire houses, other bloodlines, most of which want me dead for slaughtering the Nix family. But not all." She turned back to him. "My mentor wrote about rumors. Whispers of vampires who opposed the madness, who wanted to find a cure. If they exist." They'll either help or kill me on sight. Cassius leaned back, exhaustion showing for the first time since she'd met him. And I can't leave these woods. The wards bind me here. Traveling to find help is impossible. Then we bring them here. How? Send a polite invitation? Dear ancient vampire, please come to the forest where I murdered my family and help me fix my genetic curse. Refreshments provided. Despite everything, Alara laughed. Something like that, yes. My mentor had contacts, other scholars who studied vampire lore. Some of them might know how to reach the other houses. Your mentor is dead, but her network isn't. She kept correspondence with dozens of researchers across 5 countries. The letters were hidden, coded. If I can remember the system, Alara's mind raced. She showed me once. Said if anything happened to her, I'd need to know how to contact the others. Cassius sat forward, interest kindling in his eyes. You can reach them? Safely? Maybe. It'll take time to decode the correspondence system, but if I can send messages, if I can explain what we're attempting. She met his gaze. There must be someone willing to help, or to exploit a moment of vulnerability and eliminate the last nicks. His voice was dry. But it's still our best option. If you can make contact, do it. Alara nodded, her mind already sorting through memories. Her mentor's study, the hidden compartment behind the loose stone, the letters bundled in code, names obscured with simple ciphers. She'd paid attention, thinking it was academic curiosity. Now it might save both their lives. I'll need my mentor's correspondence journal. It's in my satchel, already retrieved. Cassius gestured to the desk, where her battered satchel sat. I assumed you'd need it eventually. She crossed to it, pulled out the journal she'd carried since her flight from Greyhold. Not the research journals about vampires, but the smaller, leather-bound book her mentor had pressed into her hands 3 days before her death. Keep this safe. If I don't survive, the names inside are important. Alara hadn't understood then. Now, flipping through pages of seemingly random poetry and recipe lists, she saw the pattern. Every 3rd line, 1st letter. Names and locations hidden in plain sight. Here, she said, pointing. Master Aldrich, Saltmere University. He specialized in blood magic theory. My mentor trusted him with her most sensitive research. Can you write to him without revealing our location? I can be vague. Ask for theoretical help with a blood magic problem. See if he responds. She looked up. But I'll need paper, ink, and a way to send the letter without leaving the forest. There's a village at the forest's edge. The people there leave offerings at the Bree. Wardstones, food, wine, sometimes messages. They think I'm a forest spirit who grants protection in exchange for tribute. His mouth quirked. I've never corrected the assumption. It keeps them peaceful. I can leave your letter there tonight. Someone will take it to the nearest post by morning. It could work. It would work. It had to. Alara returned to the table where Cassius had set the food tray. This time, she noticed the cup of tea smelled different, stronger, more metallic. More of his blood, she realized. Enough to keep her stable through another day. She drank it without hesitation. Cassius watched her, something unreadable crossing his face. You trust me. You've given me no reason not to. I'm a vampire who murdered his family. I've held you captive. Captive? Alara set the cup down. You've fed me, sheltered me, shared your knowledge freely, given me your blood to ease my suffering. If this is captivity, it's the gentlest I've ever known. Gentle doesn't mean safe. Nothing is safe. I've been dying since the moment I took my mentor's poison. She met his silver eyes steadily. But you've given me purpose, a reason to fight. That's worth more than safety. Silence stretched between them. The candles flickered, and somewhere distant, water dripped with perfect rhythm. I like you, Alara of Greyhold, Cassius said finally. Which is inconvenient, because you're human, dying, and quite possibly the only person in 2 centuries who's treated me as something other than a monster or a myth. You are a monster, she said it gently, without fear. But you're also trying not to be. That counts for something. He stood, crossed the space between them with that liquid grace, stopped close enough that she could feel the cold radiating from him, could count the silver veins threading through his skin like rivers on a map. If we do this, he said quietly, if we attempt to cure both our curses, if we fail, I need you to know that I'll ensure your death is painless, fast. You won't suffer. And if we succeed? Then you'll have a choice to make. What kind of life you want. What kind of creature you'll become. His hand came up slowly, touched her cheek with cool fingers. But whatever happens, you won't face it alone. Alara leaned into the touch despite every warning in her mind. His skin was cold, inhuman, marked with silver scars that pulsed with ancient magic. He was a vampire, a killer, cursed and bound and slowly going mad. And he was the only person in the world who understood what it meant to be trapped by your own blood. Together, then, she whispered. Together. His thumb traced her cheekbone once before he stepped back, breaking contact. Now, let's decode those letters and find someone foolish enough to help us. They spent the rest of the day in the library, surrounded by her mentor's journals and Cassius's brother's correspondence. Alara decoded names while Cassius cross-referenced them against known vampire houses, identifying which ones might be sympathetic and which would kill him on principle. By evening, they had 3 names. 3 scholars who might possibly be willing to help, or at least willing to provide information without asking too many questions. Alara drafted the letters carefully, each one slightly different. Theoretical questions about incomplete transformations. Requests for research on blood magic cures. Nothing specific enough to reveal their location or Cassius's identity, but enough to gauge interest. It's a long shot, she admitted as she sealed the 3rd letter. They might not respond. Or they might respond by sending hunters. Then we'll deal with hunters. Cassius gathered the letters. I'll leave these at the Wardstones tonight. With luck, we'll have responses within a week. And until then, we keep you stable, keep the transformation from progressing too fast, and we hope. His smile was grim. Not something I've done much of lately, but I'm willing to try. That night, Alara lay in bed and listened to the sounds of the house, the distant drip of water, the whisper of wind through cracks in stone. And beneath it all, that slow drum rhythm pulse of the wards keeping Cassius bound to this forest. She pressed her hand to her chest, felt her own heartbeat slower now, stronger, changed. Tomorrow, she might wake more vampire than human. Might cross over completely, forced to choose between monster and death. But tonight, she was still herself. Still Alara, healer and scholar, dying girl who'd poisoned her blood and bargained with a vampire. Still human enough to hope. Outside, Cassius moved through the forest with silent grace, leaving letters at ancient wardstones, prayers to scholars, pleas for help. And in the darkness between the trees, something watched, something that had been watching since the night Alara stumbled into the Shadow Vale, something that had plans of its own. The dream started on the 3rd night. Alara found herself in a ballroom, lit by crystal chandeliers, dressed in silk, the color of blood. Music played a waltz, complicated and beautiful. Around her, people danced in masks of gold and silver, their movements precise, their laughter sharp as glass. No, not people. Vampires. She could tell somehow, could sense the wrongness beneath their beauty, the predatory stillness between movements, the way their eyes tracked her across the floor with hunger barely concealed. And at the center of it all stood Cassius. Not the Cassius she knew, weary and cautious and marked with silver scars. This Cassius was young, vibrant, dressed in velvet and arrogance. He smiled as he danced with a woman whose beauty hurt to look at, whose eyes were the same silver as his sister. Alara knew this without being told. They don't suspect, the woman murmured, her voice carrying clearly despite the music. They think we're guests, honored friends. Good. Cassius's smile turned sharp. Let them think that until it's too late. The scene shifted. Now Alara stood in a corridor of the same palace, watching Cassius and his family, 13 vampires total, moving through shadows with lethal purpose. They killed guards silently, efficiently, drained nobles in their beds, left bodies arranged like art installations, messages written in blood on marble floors, a slaughter disguised as a party. Stop, Alara tried to say, but no sound came out. The scene shifted again, dawn breaking over a city in flames, Cassius standing on a balcony, blood painting his mouth, his hands, his beautiful velvet clothes. Below, survivors fled through burning streets, humans and vampires alike, united in terror. What have we done? A voice behind him, the beautiful sister, her silver eyes wide with horror. What we were always meant to do. Another voice answered. A man, older, with silver streaking his black hair. Cassius's sire. We are apex predators, children. This is our nature. This is madness. the sister whispered. This is freedom. The sire smiled, and his smile was terrible. And tomorrow, we do it again. The scene shifted one final time. Cassius alone in a room, washing blood from his hands, staring at his reflection in a silver mirror, except the mirror showed something else. Showed him with eyes gone black, with fangs elongated, with an expression of such profound hunger that it looked like agony. I'm not him yet, he whispered to his reflection. I'm not. But his reflection smiled back, and it looked nothing like him. Ilara woke gasping. She wasn't in her bed but standing in the library, her hand pressed against one of the books on the table. Cassius's brother's journal, the one detailing the last year before his death, and on the page beneath her hand, a sketch of the palace from her dream. The ballroom, the corridor, every detail exact. You saw it, she spun. Cassius stood in the doorway, his expression carefully blank, but his silver eyes held. Something like grief. I didn't mean to. Ilara stepped back from the book. I don't know how. Blood memory. He entered the library, his movements controlled. When a vampire shares blood with a human during transformation, sometimes memories transfer. It's rare, unpredictable. I should have warned you. That was real? That palace, the slaughter, the Roseman massacre, 212 years ago. His voice was flat, reciting facts. My family was invited as diplomatic guests. We were supposed to negotiate peace between vampire houses. Instead, my sire saw an opportunity. And you participated. Not an accusation, a statement. I was 80 years old, young for a vampire, still bound to my sire's will by blood oath. He moved to the window that wasn't, stared into the forest. I didn't want to kill them, but I did. I followed orders, played my part in the massacre. Ilara remembered the expression on his face in the dream. The horror, the disgust. When did you break the oath? 50 years later, when the madness started claiming my siblings, when I realized we weren't diplomats or nobles. We were rabid dogs that needed to be put down. He turned back to her. I broke the blood oath and killed them all. Every member of my family, including my sire. And then I came here, carved these wards, and swore I'd never let their madness spread. But you carry their memories, their guilt. Blood memory works both ways. His smile was bitter. Every person I've killed, every drop I've taken, I remember all of it. Every face, every scream. That's the real curse. Not the incomplete transformation. Not the madness waiting in my bloodline, but the weight of remembering everything. Ilara moved toward him, her enhanced senses catching the tension in his shoulders, the way his hands clenched and unclenched. Is that why you never feed? Why you starve yourself? I feed enough to survive. But each time I do, I risk adding more memories, more weight. He met her eyes. Can you understand that? What it's like to carry centuries of death inside you? No, honesty seemed important, but I understand carrying weight you didn't choose. Guilt for things you can't undo. Your mentor. She died because of me. Because I wasn't careful enough. Wasn't smart enough to hide the research. The church came because I left evidence. Ilara's throat tightened. I carry her death. Every day. Wonder if there was something I could have done differently? And is there? His question was gentle. Looking back, could you have saved her? No. She was always going to push too far, discover too much. The church would have come eventually. The words hurt, but they were true. Just like your family was always going to descend into madness. Just like you were always going to have to stop them. They stood in silence for a long moment. Two people carrying impossible weight. Outside, wind moved through trees. Inside, candles burned with unwavering flames. The blood memory, Cassius said finally. Will you see more? Probably. The transformation is still progressing. Ilara touched the journal again, carefully this time. No visions came. Is it always violence? Death? Not always. Sometimes it's moments of beauty, of joy. His expression softened fractionally. My brother, before the madness he loved music, played the violin with a skill that made humans weep. I carry those memories too, the good ones alongside the terrible. Show me. He blinked. What? Show me a good memory, please. I don't want to only see death when I sleep. For a moment, she thought he'd refuse. Then he crossed to her, moved with purpose, and took her hand. His skin was ice against hers, but his grip was gentle, Close your eyes, he murmured. Focus on the connection between us. The blood we've shared. Alara obeyed, felt her enhanced senses reaching out, finding the thread of his presence. The cold, the stillness, the ancient power wrapped in careful control. And then, music. She stood in a garden at twilight, roses blooming in shades of crimson and gold. A violin played, the melody so beautiful it ached. She turned and saw Cassius's brother, young, vibrant, lost in his art. His fingers flew across the strings, coaxing magic from wood and wire. Beside him, Cassius sat on a stone bench, listening with expression of pure contentment. Not the haunted vampire lord she knew, but a younger version, softer, more human. He's brilliant, she heard herself say, except it wasn't her voice but Cassius's sister's, the beautiful woman from the earlier vision. She sat beside Cassius, her head on his shoulder. He is, Cassius agreed. Though don't tell him. His ego is insufferable enough. His sister laughed, and the sound was like bells. You're just jealous. Terribly. But he was smiling, genuine and unguarded. Perhaps in another century I'll learn an instrument. Something dignified. The harpsichord, maybe. You'll be terrible at it, undoubtedly. But I'll practice for decades until I'm merely mediocre. They sat together as the music continued, as the sun set and the stars came out, as the garden filled with the scent of roses and the promise of eternity. It was, Alara realized, a moment of perfect peace. Before the madness, before the killing, when being vampire meant only endless time to perfect art and appreciate beauty, when Cassius had been happy, the vision faded. Alara opened her eyes to find Cassius watching her, his expression carefully neutral. Thank you, she whispered. For what? For showing me who you were? Before. That person is dead, has been for 2 centuries. No. Alara squeezed his hand, felt the coldness of him, the careful control. He's still there, under the wards and the guilt and the fear. He's why you're trying so hard to cure the curse, to find a way back to that garden. Cassius pulled his hand away, but gently, regretfully. That garden burned with the rest of the palace. There's no going back. Then we go forward. Find a new garden. He almost smiled. Is that your healer's optimism talking? Or the vampire blood making you reckless? Both, probably. She glanced at the window, saw dawn approaching. The letters should reach their destinations today. Maybe we'll have responses soon. And if we don't? Then we try something else. We keep fighting. She met his silver eyes steadily. You survived 200 years alone. I survived poisoning myself. We can survive this too. Cassius studied her for a long moment, then nodded slowly. Perhaps we can. But as Alara left the library, heading back to bed to sleep away the daylight hours when had she started sleeping during the day, she felt the weight of his memories settling into her bones. The violence and beauty tangled together. The brother who played violin, the sister who laughed like bells, the sire who taught them to kill without mercy, all of them dead by Cassius's hand, all of them carried, in his blood, in his memory, in the silver scars that pulsed with ancient magic. And now, through the blood they'd shared, in her memory too. She climbed into bed as the sun rose, felt exhaustion pulling her under. As sleep took her, she heard music, a violin playing in a garden that existed only in memory, beautiful and sad and impossibly distant. And she wondered if that's what haunted Cassius every day. Not the killing, not the madness, but the memory of what he'd lost, of what he'd been forced to destroy. We'll find you a new garden, she promised the darkness. Somehow, but the darkness didn't answer, and the music played on. Alara woke to voices, not the blood memories this time, but real voices echoing through the stone passages. One was Cassius, his tone sharp and controlled. The other was unfamiliar female, melodic, touched with an accent Alara couldn't place. She sat up, noting immediately that the sun had set. She'd slept the entire day away, and the hunger was back, worse than before. Her throat ached with it, her mouth dry, every sense sharpened to the point of pain. You're running out of time, something whispered in her mind. Soon you'll have to choose. She ignored it, forced herself from bed. Her legs were steady, strong. The weakness from the poison had vanished completely, replaced with a vitality that felt wrong, borrowed, not entirely her own. The voices grew clearer as she approached the main chamber. She paused at the doorway, listening. Should have warned me before I wasted 3 days traveling to this forsaken forest. The female voice, sharp with irritation. Do you know how many wards I had to break just to reach your door? I didn't invite you. Cassius, cold and formal. I've invited no one. These woods are sealed. And yet here I am, because a letter reached my scholar friend. A letter with questions only someone familiar with the Nyx curse would ask. A pause. Did you really think you could seek help anonymously? Your research is too specific. Your questions too precise. Alara stepped into the chamber. The visitor stood by the false window, dressed in traveling leathers dyed deep purple. She was tall, elegant, with dark skin and silver-white hair plaited in intricate patterns. Her eyes, when they turned to Alara, were gold, vivid, inhuman gold. Another vampire. And who is this? The woman's gaze traveled over Alara with interest. A human. Or nearly human. I can smell the threshold on you. Fresh transformation. Barely contained. Those gold eyes narrowed. Did you turn her, Cassius? After swearing you'd never create another of your cursed line? I'm not... Alara started, but Cassius cut her off. This is Alara. She's dying. I gave her my blood to stabilize her condition. Dying of what? Poison. By the scent of it. The woman moved closer to Alara with predatory grace. Clever. Self-administered, I'd guess. Slow acting. Meant to make your blood lethal to our kind. She smiled, showing teeth just slightly too sharp. Desperate times call for desperate measures, yes? Who are you? Alara demanded, fighting the urge to step back. Lysandra Vex, third daughter of House Vex, student of blood magic, and apparently the fool who decided to investigate strange research questions. She turned back to Cassius. Master Aldrich is my mentor. When your letter arrived, he showed it to me. Said it bore the hallmarks of Nyx methodology, precise, theoretical, concerned with bloodline curses. Her smile turned sharp. He was right to be suspicious. Only a Nyx would ask about incomplete transformations. Only you would ask, Cassius. So you came to gloat? To see the last Nyx reduced to begging for help? I came because I'm curious. Lysandra moved to the table, picked up one of the journals. Your family was mad, yes, dangerous. But they were also brilliant. Your brother's research on blood memory was decades ahead of its time. Your sister's work on controlled feeding could have changed everything. She set the journal down carefully. I've spent a century trying to understand why the Nyx line descended into madness when other houses remained stable. If there's a cure, it matters. Not just for you, but for all of us. Cassius studied her with obvious suspicion. House Vex opposed the Rosewood Massacre. Your mother called for my family's execution. My mother also opposed the church's campaign against vampire scholars. She believed knowledge was more valuable than revenge. Lysandra's gold eyes were steady. I'm here as a researcher, not an executioner. If you've discovered something about the curse, I want to know. If this girl, she gestured to Alara, has information that could help, I want access to it. In exchange for what? Alara asked, finding her voice. In exchange for my blood. Lysandra said it simply, as though offering tea. If Cassius's curse stems from incomplete transformation, he needs blood from a pure, stable line to complete the change. House Vex has never shown signs of the madness. My blood could work. Silence crashed through the chamber. Cassius spoke first, his voice dangerous. You would sire me. Voluntarily, knowing what my family did, I would attempt a secondary transformation, yes, with controls, safeguards. Lysandra moved to the false window, touched it. Unlike with Alara, it didn't dissolve at her contact. I've read your brother's research. The theory is sound if the original transformation was interrupted or corrupted. A second exchange with pure bloodline might override the defect. It's never been tested, but we're desperate enough to try. Alara finished. Both of us. Both? Lysandra turned, gold eyes sharp with interest. You're not just a dying human he's trying to save. You're part of this. My mentor researched his curse, came closer to understanding it than anyone. Alara moved to stand beside Cassius, a united front. I have her journals, her theories, and I've been taking his blood to fight the poison. We're connected now. If he completes his transformation, it might affect me too. Fascinating. Lysandra's interest was clinical, scholarly. Blood memory transferring both ways. Threshold transformation influenced by corrupted line. If we attempt the secondary siring with you present, actively connected through shared blood, It could cure us both, Cassius said slowly. Or kill us both. Yes. Lysandra's smile was bright and terrible, which is why we need to be very, very careful. They spent the next hours in the library, Lysandra devouring the research with voracious focus. She asked questions, dozens of them, precise and probing, about the poison's composition, about Alara's symptoms, about Cassius's wards and how they held the madness at bay. The wards are brilliant, she said, examining the silver scars on Cassius's wrists. Self-sustaining blood magic, powered by your own life force. Except you're not technically alive, so they're actually drawing on the magic that animates you. The transformation itself, which means they're suppressing the symptoms but not the cause, Cassius said. Exactly. The incomplete transformation is still there, festering. The wards just contain it, Lysandra straightened. When they fail, and they will fail eventually, the madness will take you completely. There'll be no stopping it. How long do I have? Months, maybe a year. She said it without sympathy. Which means we need to attempt the secondary transformation soon, before the wards collapse. Alara felt cold despite the warmth of the vampire blood in her veins. Months. Not years. Not decades. Cassius had months before he became the monster he'd spent 2 centuries trying to avoid. Then we do it, she said. The ritual, the exchange, whatever it takes. You understand you might not survive? Lysandra's gaze was intent. The poison in your blood could kill me during the exchange. Could kill Cassius. Could kill all 3 of us. I'm already dying. If there's a chance this works, if there's a chance we cure both curses. Alara looked at Cassius. It's worth the risk. His silver eyes held hers. You're sure? Yes. He nodded slowly. Then we prepare. 3 days to rest, to research, to ensure we understand exactly what we're attempting. On the 3rd night, we try. Lysandra agreed. 3 days. I'll study your brother's journals, refine the ritual parameters. You, she pointed to Alara, will continue taking Cassius's blood, strengthen the connection. And you, to Cassius, will feed. Actually feed. You'll need full strength for this. I don't feed from humans. Then feed from me. Lysandra extended her wrist. Vampire blood won't trigger the madness. And you'll need power for what we're attempting. Cassius looked like he wanted to refuse. But after a moment, he took her wrist with careful hands and bit. Alara looked away, fighting the surge of hunger that watching provoked, fighting the strange jealousy that twisted through her at seeing him feed from someone else. 3 days, she told herself. 3 days, and we either cure this or die trying. Through the false window, the forest watched. And deep in the shadows, something that had been waiting for centuries stirred. Sensing opportunity, the last Nyx was about to attempt something impossible. And impossibilities, as any scholar of magic knew, were when the real danger began. The ritual chamber had been prepared with meticulous care. Alara stood at the threshold, studying the changes. The circular room now held 3 tables instead of 1 marble slabs arranged in a triangle, each carved with symbols that pulsed with faint silver light. Candles surrounded them in precise patterns, their flames burning blue and steady. The air hummed with magic, old and patient and waiting. Are you ready? Cassius appeared at her shoulder, dressed in simple black robes. In 3 days of feeding from Lysandra, he'd changed, looked stronger, more vital. The silver veins in his skin glowed brighter. He looked, Alara realized, like he had in the blood memories. Beautiful and powerful and dangerous. No, she admitted, but that's never stopped me before. His smile was brief, genuine. Then let's begin. They entered together. Lysandra was already there, arranging vials and blades with clinical precision. She'd changed too, her scholar's demeanor had shifted into something focused and intent. The gold in her eyes seemed to glow in the blue candlelight. The theory is sound, she said without preamble, but the execution is delicate. Any mistake, any loss of control, and all 3 of us die. Understood? Understood, Cassius and Alara said in unison. Lysandra gestured to the tables. Cassius, center, you're the anchor. Alara, to his right, you're the catalyst. Your poisoned blood will test the transformation's completion. If he can feed from you without dying, it means the corruption is gone. I'll be to his left, providing the pure bloodline for the secondary siring. And the order of exchange? Cassius asked. I feed you first. Enough to trigger the secondary transformation. Then, while your blood is rewriting itself, You feed from Alara. The poison will either purge the remaining corruption or kill you. Lysandra's expression was grim. There's no middle ground. Alara's heart beat slower now. Stronger counted the moments. And me? What happens to me? The exchange will affect you through the blood connection. If Cassius survives, if he completes his transformation, your threshold state will resolve. You'll either complete your own transformation and become vampire. She paused. Or the vampire blood will purge the poison and you'll revert to human. It depends on which force is stronger in your system. How do we control that? We don't. Lysandra met her eyes. You'll make the choice in the moment. Your body, your will. The transformation responds to intention as much as magic. Alara nodded, processing this. In the moment between life and death, she'd have to choose, vampire or human, monster or mortality. Both options terrified her. Positions, Lysandra commanded. They moved to their assigned tables. The marble was cold beneath Alara's back, familiar from the first exchange. But this time felt different, final. This time, there would be no walking away unchanged. Cassius lay on the center table, his hands folded across his chest. He looked like a corpse prepared for burial, except for his eyes, those silver eyes that tracked Alara with something that might have been concern. Or farewell. If this goes wrong, he said quietly, if I hurt you, you won't. But if I do, then I'll know you fought it. That you tried. She held his gaze. That's all anyone can do, Cassius. Try. Lysandra moved between them, blocking Alara's view. No more talking. We begin. She raised a silver blade, the same one from before, or one like it. Drew it across her wrist with practiced efficiency. Blood welled up, gold-tinged and shimmering. She held it over Cassius's mouth. Drink, she commanded. Don't stop until I tell you. Cassius's eyes closed. His mouth opened. The blood dripped onto his tongue, and his entire body went rigid. Alara felt it through their connection, the shock of power flooding his system. Lysandra's blood was different from his, stronger, pure, in a way his corrupted line could never be. It moved through him like fire through dry grass, burning and rebuilding. The silver veins in his skin flared bright enough to illuminate the chamber. The symbols on the tables pulsed in response. The candle flames grew taller, hotter, the air pressure changing until Alara's ears popped. More, Lysandra commanded. Take it all. Let it rewrite you. Cassius drank, his throat working, his hands clenching into fists. His back arched off the table as the transformation took hold. Alara could see it happening. The silver scars he'd carved into his flesh were dissolving. The old magic releasing, as new magic took its place. The wards were breaking. Cassius! Alara tried to sit up, but invisible force held her down. The ritual had begun. She was locked in place until it concluded. The corruption is fighting back, Lysandra said, her voice strained. The incomplete transformation doesn't want to be overwritten. She gasped, staggered. It's trying to take me too. Transfer the curse to my bloodline. Then stop, Alara shouted. Break the exchange. Can't. It's too late. We finish this or we all die, Cassius screamed. Alara had never heard him make that sound raw, agonized, utterly inhuman. His body convulsed on the table, silver and gold light warring beneath his skin, the corruption fighting against the cure, neither willing to yield. He was being torn apart. Now! Lysandra pulled her wrist away, stumbled to Alara's table. Your turn. He needs the poison to purge the last of the corruption. Give him your blood. He's not stable. It's the only way. Lysandra grabbed Alara's wrist, positioned the silver blade. The poison will either kill the corruption or kill him, but we have to try. She cut. Alara's blood welled up, dark and toxic. Lysandra lifted her arm, positioned it over Cassius's still writhing form. Drink, Lysandra commanded him. Complete the transformation. Feed! Cassius's eyes opened, not silver anymore but black. Completely black, the way they'd been in the blood memory. The way they looked when the madness took hold. No, Alara breathed. He's lost. He's not. Not yet. The poison will bring him back. It has to. Her blood dripped onto his lips. Cassius's mouth opened automatically, instinct overriding reason. He drank. And the world exploded into pain. Alara felt the connection between them snap taut. Felt the poison in her blood flooding his system. felt it meet the new transformation, the pure blood from Lysandra, and react violently. Chemical warfare at a cellular level, 3 types of magic trying to coexist in one body. Cassius convulsed harder. Blood, gold and silver and black leaked from his mouth, his nose, his eyes. He was dying. She could feel him dying. Feel his consciousness fragmenting under the assault. No, not like this. Elara pushed against the invisible restraints, poured her will into their blood connection. Fight. Come back. You're stronger than this. For a terrible moment, nothing happened. Then Cassius's eyes cleared. The black receded, replaced by silver. Clear, focused silver that locked onto hers. Elara, not spoken aloud but felt through the bond, his mind touching hers across the blood they'd shared. I'm here, she sent back. Keep fighting, please. The poison continued flooding his system. But now, instead of fighting it, his body was adapting, using it. The toxic blood was burning away the corruption, the incomplete transformation, like fire purging infection. It hurt she could feel his agony echoing through their bond, but it was working. The transformation was completing. Lysandra saw it too. The corruption is dissolving. The poison is doing what 2 centuries of wards couldn't. It's forcing his blood to stabilize, to choose completion over madness. Cassius's body went limp on the table. His breathing, which Elara hadn't realized he'd resumed, slowed, steadied. The silver veins in his skin pulsed once, twice, then settled into a steady rhythm. Whole. Healed. Cured. It worked, Lysandra breathed. The secondary transformation worked. But Elara wasn't listening, because the moment Cassius stabilized, something shifted in her own body. The poison and the vampire blood, held in balance for days, suddenly crashed together, fighting for dominance, fighting to determine what she would become. Choose, something whispered. Human or vampire, mortality or eternity, choose now. She looked at Cassius, saw him pushing himself upright, saw the moment he realized she was in crisis, saw him move toward her with inhuman speed. Elara, no, but she was already falling into darkness that tasted of blood and roses, falling into the space between heartbeats where transformation lived. And in that space, she had to choose. Elara stood in the garden. Not the garden from the blood memory, this was different. More real. The roses here bloomed in impossible colors, their thorns dripping silver. The sky overhead was neither day nor night, but something in between. Perpetual twilight threaded with stars that pulsed like heartbeats. Where am I? Her voice echoed strangely, as though the garden itself was listening. The threshold. A figure appeared between the roses, her mentor, looking exactly as she had before the fire. Whole. Alive. Smiling with gentle wisdom. The space between what you were and what you could be. Elara wanted to run to her, to touch her, to prove she was real. But she knew better. You're not really here. You're dead. I'm a memory, preserved in the blood you carry, in the lessons I taught you. But I'm here to help you choose. Her mentor gestured to the garden paths. 2 roads, Elara. 2 possibilities. You must walk one. The paths appeared as she spoke. One led deeper into the garden, where the roses grew thick and the shadows held silver eyes. The other led toward light, toward a sunrise that never quite arrived but promised warmth, humanity, mortality. If I choose humanity, I'll be cured. The poison will leave my system, and I'll be normal again. Normal, her mentor agreed, but vulnerable. Mortal. You'll age, sicken, die like all humans do. And if I choose vampire, immortality, power, but also hunger, the need for blood, for prey, you'll become what you once feared. Elara looked down at her hands. In this place they seemed translucent, caught between states. I don't want to be a monster. Neither did Cassius. But he became one anyway, then fought for 2 centuries to remain human where it mattered. In his heart, in his choices. Her mentor moved closer. Being monster or human isn't about what you are, child. It's about what you choose to do with what you are. Then why make me choose? Why not just let the transformation decide? Because your will matters. Your intention. The magic responds to who you want to be, not just what the blood dictates. Her mentor touched her cheek, and her hand felt like memory, neither warm nor cold. You've spent your life healing others, putting their needs before your own. For once, Elara, be selfish. Choose what you want. What did she want? To live. That was obvious. But how? As what? She thought about the last few weeks, the poison slowly killing her, every breath painful. Then Cassius's sanctuary, his blood stabilizing her, the strength that came with the threshold transformation, the enhanced senses, the reduced pain, but also the hunger, the constant gnawing need for blood that she'd been fighting for days. If I become vampire, she said slowly, I'll need to feed, to take from humans, or from animals, or from other vampires, if they consent. There are ways to feed that don't require killing. Her mentor's smile was sad. Cassius found them. He survived for decades on small, careful feedings, never taking more than could be spared. He was miserable. He was disciplined. There's a difference. Alara looked at the two paths again. The silver-eyed shadows seemed to call to her, promising strength, promising eternity. But the sunrise promised peace. Normalcy. The chance to live a human life, however brief. What would you choose? She asked. I chose knowledge. I chose to understand what I feared rather than flee from it. That choice killed me. Her mentor's expression was gentle. But I'd make it again. Every time. Because understanding is worth any price. Understanding. Alara thought about her mentor's journals. About Cassius's patient teaching. Lysandra's clinical curiosity. About the way magic and science and blood all intertwined in patterns that took centuries to comprehend. She thought about having only decades to learn, versus having centuries, and she thought about Cassius, lying on that table, screaming as the transformation rewrote him, fighting to remain who he was inside despite what his blood made him. I want to understand, she whispered. I want time to learn everything, to finish what you started, to discover what else is possible when humans and vampires work together instead of fighting. Then you've chosen. I want to be vampire. Saying it aloud made it real, made it irrevocable. But I want to be like Cassius. Disciplined, controlled. I want to use immortality to help others, not harm them. Her mentor smiled, bright and proud. Then go, child. Wake up. And remember, being monster isn't about fangs or bloodlust. It's about the choices you make when no one is watching. Be the person I raised you to be, and the rest doesn't matter. The garden dissolved. Alara fell upward, rushing through darkness toward light, toward consciousness, toward she gasped, her eyes flying open. She was still in the ritual chamber, still on the marble table, but everything looked different. Sharper, clearer. She could see individual dust motes in the air, could hear heartbeats from distant rooms. Lysandra's steady and strong, Cassius's absent but replaced with that drum rhythm of magical animation, and she could smell everything. Stone and smoke and candle wax and blood. So much blood. She sat up slowly. Her body felt different, stronger, lighter. The constant pain in her chest was gone. The weakness in her limbs vanished. She felt powerful, alert, hungry. Alara. Cassius appeared at her side, his silver eyes wide with concern. You're awake. How do you feel? Different. She looked at her hands. Still her hands, but paler now. When she pressed them together, her skin was cool. The pain is gone. The poison? Lysandra approached cautiously. Gone too. I can feel it. The vampire blood burned it away. She met Cassius's eyes. I'm vampire. He went very still. You chose transformation. I chose understanding. Time to learn, to help. She smiled, felt her fangs for the first time, strange and sharp, but somehow right. I chose to finish what my mentor started. For a long moment, no one spoke. Then Lysandra laughed, a bright, surprised sound. You magnificent fool. You chose immortality to continue someone else's research. Is that so strange? No. Cassius touched her face gently, his cool fingers against her cool skin. It's very you, and very brave. How are you? Alara asked. The transformation, did it work? See for yourself. He held out his arm, showed her the place where the silver scars had been. The skin there was smooth, unmarked, whole. The corruption is gone. The wards dissolved because they're no longer needed. He paused, seeming to search for words. I'm complete. For the first time in my existence, my blood isn't fighting itself. You're cured. We both are. His smile was real, genuine, and more beautiful than anything she'd seen in the blood memories. You saved me. Your poisoned blood did what centuries of magic couldn't. We saved each other. Alara stood, tested her balance. Perfect. And now what? Now, Lysandra said. We test the boundaries, see what you're capable of. And we document everything, because this transformation both of yours has never been done before. The research implications alone are staggering. Alara laughed, the sound coming out brighter than she expected. You want to study us? Extensively. With your permission, of course. Lysandra's gold eyes gleamed with scholarly enthusiasm. A secondary transformation that cured a bloodline curse. A human who survived poisoning herself and used that poison to purge corruption. Do you understand how unprecedented this is? I understand we're exhausted, Cassius said dryly. The documentation can wait until tomorrow. But as they left the ritual chamber, climbing the spiral stairs back toward the main house, Alara felt energy coursing through her. Not exhaustion, the opposite. She felt like she could run for hours, like she could think forever, like the world had opened up into infinite possibility. The hunger, she said suddenly. I feel it, but it's not overwhelming. Is that normal? You're newly transformed. The first weeks are the most dangerous. The hunger is intense, but not yet uncontrollable. Cassius guided her toward the library. We'll teach you to manage it, to feed without killing, to take only what's freely given. And if I lose control, you won't. His certainty was absolute. You're too disciplined, too determined. The hunger is strong, but your will is stronger. They settled in the library as dawn approached, though now Alara could feel it differently. Not as danger, not as something that would burn her, but as something to avoid. A discomfort, rather, than a death sentence. Her transformation had been gentle, guided by 2 older vampires. She retained more humanity than most fledglings. Tell me what happens now, she said, settling into one of the chairs. Practically. Do I stay here? Do I hunt? Do I? First, you rest, Lysandra interrupted. The transformation is complete, but your system is still adjusting. You'll sleep through the day, all vampires do, initially. In a few weeks, you'll be able to stay awake during daylight hours, though it'll always be uncomfortable. And feeding? I'll teach you, Cassius said quietly. There's a village at the forest's edge. People who've left offerings for centuries. They believe I protect them from worse things in the dark. His smile was slight. I do. And in exchange, when I need to feed, I visit them in their sleep, take small amounts. Ensure they wake with pleasant dreams and no memory of what occurred. You've been doing that for 200 years? It's how I survived without. Becoming a monster. Discipline. Routine. Respect for the lives I borrowed from. He met her eyes. I'll show you how. We'll hunt together until you're confident in your control. The thought of hunting, of feeding, should have terrified her. Instead, Alara felt only curiosity. Determination. She'd chosen this transformation specifically to learn, to understand. Fear had no place in that pursuit. When do we start? Tomorrow night. Cassius stood, moved to the shelves. Tonight, you rest, adjust. Let your new senses settle. He pulled out a book, handed it to her. And you read. Your mentor's journal. The one about threshold walkers and incomplete transformations. Now that you've experienced it yourself, you'll understand it differently. Alara took the journal reverently. Her mentor's handwriting, preserved. A connection to the woman who'd raised her, taught her, died for knowledge. She'd be proud of you, Lysandra said softly, choosing transformation to continue her work. That takes courage. Or foolishness. Alara opened the journal, saw familiar diagrams. I poisoned myself, bargained with a vampire, and transformed into a creature I was raised to fear. My life choices are questionable at best, but they're yours. Cassius sat across from her, his expression open in a way she'd never seen before. Without the wards suppressing the corruption, without the constant fear of madness, he looked younger, lighter. You chose every step. That matters. They sat in comfortable silence, reading. Outside, dawn broke over the shadow veil. The forest that had been Cassius's prison for 2 centuries now stretched open, accessible. The wards were gone. He could leave whenever he wished. But he stayed. You could go, Alara said, not looking up from the journal. Nothing binds you here anymore. No. His voice was soft. But this is my home, my sanctuary. And now it's yours too, if you want it. She did look up then, found him watching her with those silver eyes that know. Longer held darkness, only possibility. I want it, she said. For as long as you'll have me. His smile was answer enough. Lysandra left 3 days later, promising to return with more research materials. I'll tell Master Aldrich what we accomplished. He'll want to study the results, but I'll keep your location secret. You've earned your privacy. Thank you, Alara said, for risking yourself to help us. Knowledge is always worth the risk. Lysandra clasped her shoulder briefly. Besides, you're proof that vampires and humans can work together towards something greater than survival. That's worth documenting. When she was gone, the house felt quieter, more intimate. Just Cassius and Alara, learning to navigate new existences together. He taught her to hunt with patience and precision, how to choose prey carefully, how to take only enough to sustain without harming, how to cloud memories so no one remembered her presence, how to feed from animals when human blood wasn't available, or ethical. She proved an apt student. Her healing background made her naturally gentle, naturally careful. Within weeks, she could hunt alone. Within months, she'd perfected the technique. But she always preferred hunting with Cassius, moving through the forest together, 2 shadows among many, partners in survival, in discipline, in the choice to be more than their nature demanded. During the days when they slept through the burning hours, she sometimes had blood memories, but they weren't always Cassius's anymore. Sometimes they were Lysandra's, absorbed during the ritual. Sometimes they were fragments of people she'd fed from, their joy and sorrow and mundane concerns. She learned to cherish them. Each memory was a gift, a glimpse into lives she'd never live but could witness, could honor by remembering. And at night, she and Cassius worked in the library, reading her mentor's journals, cross-referencing with his brother's research, building on Lysandra's theories, slowly, carefully, documenting what they'd learned about transformation and bloodlines and the thin space between human and monster. We should publish, Alara said one night, 6 months after her transformation. Not everything, but the theoretical work, the research that could help others. Cassius looked up from his notes. It could draw attention. Scholars, hunters, people who'd use the information for harm. Or it could help other vampires trapped by bloodline curses. Could prevent future massacres like Rosemond. Could show humans and vampires that cooperation is possible. She held his gaze. My mentor died trying to share knowledge. I won't make her sacrifice meaningless. He studied her for a long moment, then nodded slowly. Then we publish. Under pseudonyms. Through Lysandra's academic networks. Carefully, she agreed. They drafted the first paper together. A theoretical exploration of incomplete transformations and secondary siring. No personal details, no identifying information. Just the research, pure and clean. Master Aldrich published it in an obscure magical journal 6 months later. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Vampires from a dozen houses wrote requesting more information. Human scholars sought consultation. The church issued a condemnation, calling it heretical. But the knowledge was out, spreading, growing, and in the Shadow Vale, in a house carved from stone and magic, 2 vampires continued their work. Teaching each other, learning together, building something that had never existed before, a true partnership between one who'd been vampire for centuries and one who'd chosen transformation to continue a dead woman's dream. Do you ever regret it? Cassius asked one night, a year after her transformation. They sat in the garden, not the one from blood memory, but a real one they'd cultivated together. Roses and nightshade growing side by side in the moonlight. Which part? The poisoning? The bargain? The transformation? Any of it. All of it. Alara considered the question seriously. She thought about the pain she'd endured, the fear, the constant proximity to death. And she thought about what she'd gained: immortality, yes, but also understanding, purpose, a partner who saw her not as human or vampire but simply as herself. No, she said finally. I don't regret any of it, even the suffering. It led me here. To a forest, with a monster, to a sanctuary, with someone who understands what it means to choose who you become, rather than accepting what you're born as. She reached across the space between them, took his hand. His skin was cool and familiar against hers. We're not monsters, Cassius. We're something else, something new. What? She smiled. Proof that curses can be broken. That transformation doesn't have to mean losing yourself. That monsters and humans aren't so different, we all just want to survive. To understand, to matter. He squeezed her hand gently. Your mentor would be proud. I know. I feel her sometimes, in the blood memories. She's always smiling. Alara looked up at the stars, endless and patient. She's why I chose this. Why I'll keep choosing it, every night. Because knowledge is worth any price. Even immortality with a reformed monster? Especially that. She turned to face him fully. Because you're not reformed. You're completed. We both are. And now we get to spend eternity figuring out what that means. Cassius pulled her closer, and they sat together in the garden they'd built. Two vampires who'd chosen compassion over hunger, understanding over instinct, partnership over isolation. Above them, the stars wheeled in ancient patterns. Below them, the earth held secrets centuries deep. And between them, in the space where blood, memory, and conscious choice intertwined, something new was growing. Not quite human, not quite monster, simply themselves. Finally, wholly themselves. And that, Alara thought as sleep began to claim her with the approaching dawn, was worth every drop of poisoned blood she'd drunk, worth every moment of transformation, worth eternity. 5 years later, the study had grown. What began as a single room in Cassius's underground sanctuary had expanded into a wing of chambers, each dedicated to different research. Vampire physiology, blood magic theory, transformation mechanics. The walls were lined with journals, some original, like her mentor's, others newly filled with Alara's careful documentation. She stood at her desk now, transcribing notes from their latest feeding experiment. They'd discovered that vampire blood could be preserved in crystal vials for up to 6 months without degrading, meaning emergency medical supplies for remote human villages. Another paper to write, another secret to share carefully with the scholars who'd proven trustworthy. You're working too hard. Cassius appeared in the doorway, holding 2 cups of tea, a habit they'd maintained despite no longer needing the warmth or sustenance. Something human to cling to, a ritual that said we remember what we were. The work is never done. But she took the cup gratefully. Let the familiar herbs soothe her throat. Lysandra sent another letter. 3 more vampire houses are requesting consultation on bloodline stabilization. Apparently, the Nyx curse wasn't as unique as we thought. 3 more houses with incomplete transformations? Variations of it. Different symptoms, but same root cause. Alara settled into her chair, gestured for him to sit. The research is expanding faster than we can document it. We might need to train others. Create a proper school for blood magic theory. Cassius's expression turned thoughtful. That would require revealing ourselves. Our location. Not necessarily. Lysandra could front it, claim she discovered the techniques through experimentation. Alara sipped her tea. We stay here, anonymous, feeding information to scholars who can use it publicly. Always. Protecting the secret. Always protecting us. She met his eyes. 5 years. And we've accomplished more than my mentor managed in 30, but we're still vulnerable, still outnumbered by those who destroy us rather than learn from us. Are you afraid? Sometimes. Honesty felt important between them. Not of death, we're already dead in the ways that matter, but of losing this. The work, the purpose, the partnership. Cassius set his cup down, moved to her side. His hand settled on her shoulder, cool and steady and real. Then, we'll be careful. We'll continue sharing knowledge without exposing ourselves. And we'll trust that the work matters more than the recognition. My mentor always said the best scholars care about truth, not glory. Your mentor was wise. His thumb traced small circles against her collarbone, a gesture of comfort he'd learned over 5 years of partnership. She'd be proud of what you've built here. What we've built. Alara covered his hand with hers. I couldn't have done any of this without you. Your knowledge, your patience, your willingness to let a dying girl experiment on you. He laughed softly. Best decision I've made in 2 centuries. They sat in comfortable silence, watching through the false window as the forest stirred with nocturnal life. Somewhere in the distance, a wolf howled. Closer, birds called to each other in languages Alara had learned to interpret. The world was so much richer now, experienced through enhanced senses, so much more alive. Do you ever think about the village? She asked. The people who leave offerings? Often. They're thriving. The protection I provide is real. I keep worse things away from their borders. And in return, they give me what I need to survive. His voice went soft. It's not the relationship my family imagined, not domination or fear, but it works. Cooperation. Symbiosis. We both benefit, both survive. He squeezed her shoulder gently. It's what you and I have too. Different species, working toward common goals. Elara smiled. I'm not sure I count as a different species anymore. Vampire is vampire. But you were human once. You remember humanity in a way I never can. That perspective matters. It did. Elara never wanted to forget what it felt like to be mortal, vulnerable, dying. That memory kept her compassionate, kept her careful when she fed, kept her focused on helping rather than harming. I saw her again, she said quietly. In the blood memories. My mentor. She was standing in this study, looking at our work. Smiling. Good memories? The best. She turned in her chair, faced him fully. She said we were doing exactly what she hoped for. Building bridges instead of walls, proving that understanding conquers fear. Cassius knelt beside her chair, bringing them eye to eye. Silver met silver, they matched now. Two vampires of similar age and power, partners in every sense. Then we continue, he said. For her, for the future, for every vampire and human who could benefit from what we've learned. For eternity, if necessary. His smile was sharp and warm and entirely genuine. Eternity sounds perfect. He kissed her, then a brief touch of cool lips, a promise of infinite tomorrows. When he pulled back, his silver eyes held that mixture of affection and respect that had grown between them over 5 years of close work. Come, he said, standing and offering his hand. The night is young, and we have research to continue. Lysandra's latest questions about blood memory won't answer themselves. Elara took his hand, let him pull her to her feet. Together they moved through the underground sanctuary, through passages carved from bedrock and magic, toward the library where knowledge waited. Behind them, on her desk, the cup of tea grew cold. Around them, candles burned with steady flames. Above them, the forest stretched into darkness, sheltering secrets and scholars in equal measure. And ahead of them, infinite nights waited. Infinite questions to answer, mysteries to unravel, lives to touch through careful research and shared wisdom. Elara had poisoned herself to escape death. Instead, she'd found immortality, purpose, partnership, a way to honor her mentor's sacrifice while building something entirely new. She'd warned him her blood tasted like poison. He'd drunk it anyway. And in that impossible exchange, they'd both found redemption. Two vampires, working in darkness to bring light to those who needed it most. Not heroes, not monsters, simply scholars, healers, partners choosing compassion over hunger, knowledge over ignorance, hope over despair. One transformed night at a time.